What's going on, guys? So in this video I'm going to be going over just the rebuilding of this starter. Now this is a Yamaha starter from a 2002 Yamaha R6. As far as I know, most other Yamaha starters will be similar to this. I've rebuilt other starters, older starters, not one as new as this one, but this still looks it looks smaller than the other starter that I rebuilt, but the other Yamaha starter that I rebuilt, but it's not that much smaller. So here's my kit that I ordered online. And before I open this up, I did make sure that I cleaned this fairly well, so there's not really any dust and residue and everything on it. So I just went over it with, I actually used brake clean, and I know what you're thinking, hey, there's rubber seals right there. Isn't the brake clean bad on the rubber seals? And yes, it is, but this kit that I ordered came with rubber seals, so I will be replacing those. The thing that it didn't come with is this O-ring here, so I was careful and I didn't spray too much brake clean around that. But I will be peeling this off, and I'll just be going through just a full disassembly of this down to this. Now this is a DC motor. Obviously, it's a DC motorcycle, and this is known as a brush motor. So there's brush motors, and then there's brushless motors. If you're curious about the differences between those, there's not a shortage of videos on YouTube explaining the differences between those. But whenever these brushes are worn down completely, they cannot they don't make contact with that cylinder that's around this shaft, so it ends up not starting the motorcycle, not spinning the starter, and thus not turning the engine over. So this is the part that's going to be replaced. It's the brush assembly, and as you can see, this is pretty simple. There's not a lot really going on here, so I'm going to set this aside, and I'm going to walk through the disassembly of this. Now you can tell, like, hey, there's these two O-rings, so that's that one and that one, and there's these tiny O-rings which would go around, where was it? So it would go around these two bolts whenever these are taken out, and this dust ring is going to go inside of here to keep this shaft from getting any dust inside and damaging the internals of the motor. There's a bearing, and this most likely sits on the very bottom of this, so this will be replaced if I can get it out of the assembly. I might not be able to get it out of the assembly, but it's not. This isn't that important to replace. If you can't get it out, don't worry about it. And then this one is going to go on the inside, probably on the back side of this. So it would sit like this on the inside of the starter, and then this would sit all the way over here, and this goes on the back side. So 7mm. This is a 7mm socket, and I'm just gonna loosen this. These are not very tight at all, and I did bench test the starter after I pulled it off. I didn't video that, so that's not in the other video that I have removing this. I'm just taking this and manhandling it. So I just grabbed this and I grabbed this, and you heard that pop. So this side pops off. I'm gonna have to clean that up. Look at that. Look at that soot. I'm gonna try to do the same thing to this. I'm just grabbing this, just manhandling it really. And that's just like that. You see, this lines up with that line right there. So whenever you put it back together, you want to make sure that line lines up there. And then there's a groove on this. That groove lines up with that hole. Not groove, but that, you see what I'm talking about. That little nub right there that hangs off, that little tab lines up with that hole. It's that bearing I was talking about. Pilot bearing, I believe it's called. So if I set this up on its feet, so that pilot bearing goes in there, and the magnets are holding on to this, keeping it from coming out. There's no sense in taking this out of the middle, so I'm just gonna set this down just like that. Those O-rings, I'll work on pulling those off. The bearings in this actually seem okay. It was spinning fairly easily, but since I'm in this far, I might as well. And I'm going to set this here because I don't want to get dirt and stuff on it. But I'm going to clean it before it goes back in. This is probably a bit overkill. This is a massive screwdriver, but my other ones are pretty dirty. Prying up a little bit on that side. It shifted a bit. That side came out. That's out. Good. And then the bearings. You know what? These don't. Yeah. Those new ones don't fully fit on anyway. So that fits on. So check that. Check to make sure that this does slide on the shaft. Because these don't seem like they want to. So that's it's not good, but I'm glad that I stopped. I'm not going to replace these. I'm not going to replace these bearings. But if you want to replace yours, see, I didn't damage these. I didn't damage the inner race of the bearings. I was pushing more on the outer race. So this dust seal. So this goes in. What was that? That was like this on the old one. And remember, I double checked and made sure that this does go around the shaft, and that does go around there. So I'm gonna put this back. This is the new one. I'm gonna slide it in. There's no specific way that this is supposed to be turned as long as this side is facing up. And that goes there. Now you can clean these parts. It's a good idea to clean these parts before you put it all back together. But I mean, there's so much dust and everything, and all of this soot and just pieces of the from the old brushes. So much of that stuff in here. I don't know if I could really fully clean it, but I'm probably gonna spray it out with brake clean or electrical contact cleaner, and then just let it dry out before I fully assemble this back together. So the old other pilot bearing does fit. That goes on. That works. Let's work on changing this out, and then I'll work on getting the pilot bearing out of there. So this nut is 10 millimeter here. That's the wrong way. It's 10 millimeter. It's not very tight. I'm just gonna lay these down in the order that they come off. It's a metal washer. That's a guard, like a little circuit board type material. It's like a little insulator. I think that's another insulator. All this dirt and everything, I'm gonna dump that out and spray this out really well with brake clean. There's no rubber in here. There's just that brass pilot bearing. Comparing this one and this one, you can see what I was talking about with the brushes being worn down. The brushes on this one, they're worn down completely. And I mean, these springs, they still work. They're still pushing on this. They're still pushing on the brushes, but it's worn down. These are new. Contact A and Contact B. They're both pretty solid. But check the height of this shaft, because I've seen them sometimes to where this shaft is slightly shorter than this one. Now that is very important. You want the shafts to be the same height, because you don't want to be able to get one nut on and not be able to get the second nut on, because some of these starter housings are a little bit thicker or thinner than the other ones. So set that back there. So I'm gonna go wash this out really quick. Now you see I got a lot of that black powder out of the way. I cleaned this really well, so I just went out, sprayed this, and just let it air out a little bit. Brake clean evaporates pretty fast, and then clean the inside of this. So this is pretty clean too. I just wanted to make sure I got all the dust out. Now sometimes these O-rings are a slightly different diameter, so before I break off the old one, I'm going to make sure that this one fits. And since the bearings didn't fit very well, yeah, it looks like it'll fit. So that side fits, and that one looks like it fits really well too. So I don't have to worry about that. Those fit, so I can cut off the old ones. So I won't be reusing these. I'll be cutting those off. Or let's see if I can. Still in pretty good shape. Sometimes they crumble whenever they come off. It's because they're exposed to the elements, keeping dust out. Still not bad, but I'm replacing them anyway. They've served their purpose for 15 years. Alright, you want to make sure that's not twisted whenever you're putting it on. So that's on. Now, let's work on putting this guy in. I'm not going to use that nut. I'm going to use one of the old ones because I like it having more of a surface area, like this one, as long as the threads match. Yeah, they do. So I'm going to use that nut. The order that these go down, I'm laying that face down. Pop that bad boy out. This should be the old O-ring. Alright, the wire on the old one is a little shorter than the wire on the new one. So I'm gonna have to be a little bit creative with this. So I just bunched it up a little bit. If I can get it to fit in there. Doesn't look like it's touching the other. No, it's not touching the other wire. There are better rebuild kits than this one, but this is not bad. Alright, now this point in the video I'm gonna say do not buy this starter rebuild kit. Caltric. The bearing didn't work. This bearing wasn't the right size. I can still make this work, but that wire that goes on this side is the ground side, but the wire that goes on this side, I'm having a little bit of trouble keeping it out of the way because I definitely don't want it rubbing on the motor. Okay, that's why this isn't going all the way in. This one and this one are different sizes. This is supposed to sit inside of here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slip this on, replace this one, because that's junk. It's not the right size. Thing number 2 that's not the right size, but hey, we're making it work. So in addition to this wire being too long, this bearing not going on the shaft, this kit is still going to work. So get that rubber ring going all the way through. I'm going to cinch this down. Alright, now I was able to wedge this back in place. Now I didn't really I didn't over tighten this with this 10mm. That 10mm nut goes on. I didn't get that crazy tight. And yeah, I didn't change out the pilot bearing. The pilot bearing is still in decent shape in here. I don't have the pilot bearing puller tool. There's a pilot bearing tool that it has 2 little fingers that would stick underneath this. Like you basically just stick it in and then the fingers grab on the bottom. I'm not too concerned with changing out that pilot bearing. It's just a starter. I don't have the bearing tool, so I'm just gonna deal with it. If you want to get the pilot bearing pull tool and you want to change it out, then hey, go for it. Yours would be better than mine. So these brushes push on the motor, so I'm gonna have to push up. Get those in place, and I'm gonna turn it around here to where that groove lines up. I might have to tap this brush kit in. Now that's pressed down on the inside. Now I only just have to line up this groove. These brushes, so they're designed to push on the motor, so when I put this in, I'm putting it in and it doesn't sit perfectly straight, right? It's not because you're not putting it together wrong, but I just have to push the brushes against the motor and then slide the motor down into place. Oh, also, there were 2 very flat washers that were on this shaft side. They looked like they were copper. So So they sit in just on top of that pilot bearing. See my rubber ring, O-ring, dust seal, it's still lined up. And I've got these two in place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slip these on first. These little spacers for the motor. I guess I'm not too worried about lining up the screw holes as long as the marks line up like that. And put these little dust O-rings on. See, the old ones are still in there. I'm just going to put these on top of those. Hey, why not? Start screwing it in by hand. But hey, that's it for this video. Just proves that it does work. I'm just going to... Starts up fine. I am running on the rebuilt starter right now. I didn't go and buy another one. But thanks a lot for watching, and hey, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, other motorcycle buddies. I rebuilt it with a $7-8 kit. It's a very, very poor quality kit. It still works. I'm happy with this. I'm just going to finish putting this back together because it's getting a little dark over here. But thanks a lot for watching though, and God bless you guys.